Good morning. I'm here today to make sure that we continue this 100 Stories campaign, and I've got a very special guest for you. I would like to throw it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Vishaak, and I'm currently a first-year uni student studying at the University of Queensland. And look, mental health is something that I'm very passionate about, like helping advocate for it, because I know that the impacts that it can have on individuals' life. And I think what makes it very close to home for me is the fact that it often goes unnoticed and it reduces people's potential. So many people that I know that they could be so much better, but because of mental health, it has really hindered their potential. It really hindered the way that they socialize and impact with other people. And I guess that is definitely very bad for themselves, but it also has influence on their friends and family. So it's something that I really wish to advocate for. So I'd like to start just by sharing a little bit about my story. So I was born in India back over 15, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, actually. So I was born in India. And then since then, when I was about 1 or 2 years old, my parents moved. And my dad moved all around the world. So growing up as a child, I moved to, I think, 4 or 5 different continents, 6 or 7 different cities. And this is like every single year until the age of maybe 14, I was moving every single year from place to place, school to school, city to city. And I think that, look, a lot of people might think, wow, it was amazing. I got to move from place to place, experience all these things. And yes, I'm very grateful that I was able to experience all these different cultures and all these different places. But I think what made it very difficult was growing up as a kid. I never really settled in one specific place. So a little bit about my story. I moved to Scotland, and then about a year later, moved to the Gold Coast. A year later, moved to Sydney, back to the Gold Coast, up to Townsville, back to the Gold Coast, then to Canada again. It moved around in Canada, then lived in India for a little while, then came back to the Gold Coast. So like moving around and changing schools, it made it very hard for me to settle down. And I think as a child, it made it very hard for me to develop strong, meaningful connections with my friends, because I know there was like a period of time, maybe like 4 or 5 years, where every single year I would have to make a new set of friends. And it made it very difficult for me to gain the social skills to connect with people. And I think especially growing up, that really did have an impact on my social skills, but also had an impact on my self-confidence and my ability to go out there and really sell myself or show other people who I really am. And I think that by moving around so much and by having to go from place to place, it really did negatively impact the way that others see me. Because look, I never really learned the social skills to interact with one group of people. And then another thing, and I know that this is a lot better right now, but being an immigrant here in Australia, there were slight issues of like racism or slight issues of bullying, especially growing up through school, especially like at the start of high school as well. And I think that culture shock for other people was also, and again, it's like not necessarily their fault. It's also part of like the subculture here, or at least what it used to be 5 years ago. Now it's gotten a lot better, and I can see that it's gotten a lot better. But I think that being excluded socially because of something that I can't control, that was something that also impacted on me. It made me question who I was. It really made me question my sense of worth, whether I really had any belonging in this place that I really immigrated to. It wasn't necessarily my first choice. I was really following my parents, but it really made me question whether I belonged here or not. And I think that really did have an impact on me growing up. And it did mean that I grew up a lot, I matured a lot later. But I think that at least in my experience, looking back on it in hindsight, I'm really glad I had that experience because yes, like, look, it was definitely tough. It was definitely something that was horrible, and no other person should go through it. But looking at myself now and how much I've grown as a person and how resilient I am, I don't think I'd ever be here if it weren't for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. You can see that there's so much strength in having those experiences. Yes, initially you may have been challenged, but look at you now. And what an opportunity to also share that with others in your network, because it brings me to my next question, because what is that message of hope? If you are thinking back to those times when you were younger, and yes, it's really challenging, child and adolescent, you actually want quite a bit of stability, and and you have to pick up your life again. And I know a lot of people like, There was a phase myself where I was living out of a suitcase, 20 different houses at one stage. It's not necessarily the average person's story, but it can feel short term, So my next question to you is, so yes, it was challenging at the time, but what are some words of hope that you wish you heard? You now know that life can get a lot better, and that some of that story has actually become such a power for you now. But what is something that you think you needed to hear in that moment?
I think often children, and especially myself, I know this was definitely the case in my situation, was that I always looked at the short term. I always looked at what was happening the next day. I always looked at what was happening right now. And I didn't really consider anything too much in the future. Again, like, look, being a child, I just wanted to have fun now. I wanted to be socially included now. I wanted everything now, right? Now. It's like this sense of impatience. And I think one thing that I really needed to hear, and like, I think that other children, other people going through their teenage years and might be feeling socially excluded might need to hear, is that it doesn't necessarily matter in the bigger scheme of things what people might be treating you like right now. And the reason why I say that is because, like, yes, obviously it's bad that they're treating you this way, but if you look at it in your entire life as you grow up, and this is what I found very prevalent, is that as you grow up, especially as you grow up past your teenage years, people do become a lot more accepting because they can see the strength that you have going through such a situation. And I think that one message of hope that I would say is stay resilient, stay strong, stay knowing that in just a little bit of time, people will start realizing the strength that you have. Because I think often the people who do get excluded, they're the ones who do have the strength. They're the ones who might be unique. They're the ones who might have certain gifts or talents that aren't currently recognized. So I think one message of hope that I would say is keep pushing through, keep being consistent and true to who yourself. Don't change yourself for other people. Because I think that was a big thing that happened with me. I often found myself trying to change myself because, like, I felt socially excluded. I want to feel that I fit in. So I constantly kept changing myself. And I found that the more I changed myself to fit other people's needs, the more they took advantage of that. So stay true to yourself. And I feel that the more you are like yourself, the more people will appreciate that you are true to yourself and a genuine person. And that in the long term, you will gain the skills to interact with other people and gain the skills to get respect from as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah, brilliant. Geez, there were some gold messages in there. True authenticity, right? Sometimes it takes so much effort if you're changing yourself to try and cater to someone else's needs. But if we let go of those shackles just to be able to own our own selves, that's when our true essence comes through. Beautiful, beautiful message. Now, you touched on a little bit of concept of, yes, push through, know that, things will get easier, be resilient. But speaking of resilience, one of the questions for the campaign is, what's one mental health tactic that you've used in a time of need? So resilience building are often key tactics. So it could be, I know some other people have shared physical exercise has been something that they've found has given them value. If you do it on a daily basis, it will help you longer term. So do you have a tip when it comes to resilience building or a mental health tactic that you've used yourself to overcome adversity?
Yes. So there's like two lines of thought that I'd like to share. So like the first one is more so a philosophy or mindset. And then the second one is more so a physical thing that you can do. But going on the mindset and the philosophy is that like just a little bit of background on myself. My mother sacrificed a lot to raise me. And like she loves me every single day. And she's done a lot to get me to where I am today. Because like my father moving around everywhere, like she moved with him. But he was always at work. So she was the one who was caring for me, being like a full-time employee, but also having to take care of me at home, sacrifice a lot for me. So I think that she raised me with this very good value and this mindset that, and I think that this really does help you cope with any hardships. It's that you are important. So no matter what anybody else tells you, no matter what other people say, you are the most important thing in your life, right? Like you really need to take care of yourself. And I think that by acknowledging that you actually are the most important thing in your life, and that if anything were to happen to you, yes, it would affect you really negatively, but it also affects so many people around you. It's that people, they look up to you, that people, they love you. You do have loved ones. You have lots of people who are happy that you're here. And I think that often it's so much easier, especially in society, to criticize someone to not be valued than to say that you value them. And I think often not many people spread words of appreciation only because they think it might be implied. But the only words you might hear are those saying that you're not good enough or that you don't fit in, right? So I think it's very important for you to know in your mind that what you might hear, that's not even a quarter of the story, right? There's so much more that you don't hear because people just assume that you know it, right? People assume that you know that they love you or that they respect you, right? So I think that it's very important to have this mindset that you are valued, you do have self-worth. And I think going on from there, another thing that's very important is to know that in the long term, nothing should affect you, right? And I think that it goes back to this message that if you are genuinely true to yourself, regardless of what other people say, and if you don't necessarily care about what they think, that is something that will really put you in a good mindset because you'll continue doing what you want to do. You'll continue going where you want to go. You'll continue achieving what you want to do without being influenced by other people. Because it's often the case, and I found this, that every time I change myself to suit somebody else, I always ended up not getting what I truly wanted or not achieving what I truly wanted because I was simply becoming a puppet of theirs, right? So I think know exactly what you want and just do it, because regardless of what one or two other people say, especially like in high school, or especially like in your teenage years, if a few people are like treating you badly, you never end up seeing them again anyway, because they never supported you in the first place. And I think the best mindset to go in with as motivation is to want to prove them wrong, want to prove that everything they said was wrong. And the best way to get revenge is through success. And I don't mean that you should get revenge in any means at all. Like, I don't mean that you should ever negatively impact anyone, or ever emotionally hurt anybody or physically hurt anybody. I don't think that that is something that should be done. But that was a good saying in the sense that the best way to deal with any feelings of resentment or any feelings of hate towards other people is just to show them that they're wrong. And then going on to more so the physical tactics that I do with mental health, or something that I did to stay resilient, was through physical exercise. And look, I was never really an athletic kid. I was quite chubby. I really didn't have many talents athletically. But what I did was I joined rowing, and this was at my school. They had a very strong rowing program. And it was something that, honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to try that because I wanted this new experience. And I stuck with it. I still row to this day. That's like 7 years that I've been rowing for. And look, for anyone else around rowing, it can be a very tough and challenging sport. But I think what it has taught me was to always stay resilient. So whenever like you're in the middle of the race, you can't just quit halfway through. You have to push to the very end. And I think that what one of my coaches, and it's had a really strong impact on me, said to me was that physical exercise is one of the best things you can do for your mind. And look, it might sound very counterintuitive. You might think the physical exercise only really helps your body. But one thing that I noticed was that the more I rode, or the more I spent time training, or the more time I spent doing physical exercise, the better my grades end up being, the better my social skills end up being. And the reason why was because it just put me in this good physical state that my mental state was able to catch up with it. So stay physically active.
Absolutely. I really like what you said there in terms of the lesson learned of resilience from rowing, because it's like you will get fatigued and you will feel like wanting to quit, and you can't quit halfway through a race. But yeah, look, this year has certainly been tough for many. 2021, there's still so many that are impacted by these lockdowns, even though we may not see some of that here. So it's a fantastic, there's a few key insights there that you've shared with us that I think would be warm, welcoming reminders, especially if we're caught in that whirlwind. So thank you for sharing. My final question to you is, why investment of prevention? So just a little subtext is, I tend to find health kicks in. So when I say health, I'm talking about like let's say the healthcare sector. The government has a healthcare sector. They pay money for health to keep their citizens healthy, but it's very heavily focused on an illness model. Like it waits until we get sick and then it kicks in, and then there's hospital beds and services in crisis, for example, that it can provide. So it's this new thing now. I mean, not so new. The health and wellness industry has been around for a while, but when it comes to mental health prevention, that there's some relatively new trends of focus that are starting to come through. So why do you feel like it's important to invest in the prevention of mental health?
So I'm currently studying medicine at university, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. And look, I'll tell you this, treatment is always better than a cure. Prevention is always better than actually having to cure the illness, right? And look, name any front you want, like any sort of front of the battle against mental health. Prevention is always better for every single party, right? So if you look at it from the government's point of view, it's cheaper to prevent mental illness. It's cheaper to provide services such as Lifeline or more education and awareness than actually have beds for suicide prevention, right? It's so much cheaper and more efficient for the government, right? If you also look at, obviously, the individual, it's better not to be in a situation where you're attempting to take your life, but it's always better to have the issues cured at the start, because rather than waiting for the issues to compound on each other, because obviously mental health doesn't just come by itself. And I think that's what makes it very hard to diagnose, is because initially it is just a mental issue that can't be seen. But then as time progresses, there are other physical comorbidities, such as a loss of appetite or such as a loss of motivation, that you can see manifesting itself. But I think that if you can prevent that happening in the first place, then not only will you obviously stop the issue at the roots, but you'll prevent all these other diseases or all these other physical illnesses from coming aboard mental health as well. And then you also look at the friends and family, right? I think after any disclosure of any mental health issues or any disclosure of, say, attempts to take your life, there is often the stigma that stays with the person. And in a lot of cases, like I have friends who, after disclosing they had mental health, they are treated differently, not just as a normal person. So I think that that obviously might be bad for them in some situations, because people might overcompensate knowing this, but it doesn't necessarily make them feel included as just a regular person. So I think that being able to prevent mental health at the root cause, so being able to prevent it from ever occurring, or maybe making people more comfortable with dealing with it, I think that will be something that's beneficial for every single party involved.
Absolutely. And how is that as a message of hope to kind of end this interview as well? No, look, I couldn't agree more with what you were saying. And yeah, it is interesting. Of course, there's a suite of different mental illnesses that are out there, and some of the mood disorders may certainly come about, and you see the symptoms eroding into longer term consequences, and we certainly can reverse some of that pathway. There's still quite a lot we do need to learn in the mental health sector. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Are there any further comments, queries, or concerns that you would like to leave in this interview?
No, there wasn't. But thank you so much for having me today. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to at least share my story with others.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. And your story is certainly so inspiring. It's so important. Like, there's so much value in stories of lived experience that we can certainly all learn from and connect with. So I really do hope that your story gets out there and touches some of the people that need to hear the message right now. So thank you so much to everyone that is watching. We look forward to giving you more of the 100 Stories campaign as we continue moving forward. Thank you, and bye for now.